We got some signings for the AHL team, Charlotte Checkers. We have some hot takes from former and current Florida Panthers, and we're going to discuss the first game of the Prospect Showcase up in North Carolina between the Florida Panthers and the Carolina Hurricanes prospects, all on today's edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
Your Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
And welcome into this Friday, September 16th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez, and you can follow me on Twitter at Monoman12. Follow the show account on Twitter at LO_FLA Panthers. Don't forget to also subscribe to Locked On Fantasy Hockey and Locked On NHL on podcast and on YouTube, along with this show, where they'll be covering all the preseason activities around the National Hockey League. So, Cats fans, we are 6 days away from the start of training camp as far as the NHL squad, but rookie camp is 2 days of rookie camp have come and gone, and we have a game, actual Florida Panthers players in cat sweaters getting on the ice, putting 60 minutes of work for the franchise of the Florida Panthers. And we're going to get more of that into the last segment. But there was a few signings for the Florida Panthers in their AHL affiliate, Charlotte Checkers. The Florida Panthers have signed JF Berube, goalie, to a PTO. And people have been wondering what did that mean for possibly another goalie that signed under a PTO in Andrew Hammond, aka the Hamburglar. And it was reported today that Andrew Hammond did sign a contract to go back to the KHL. Don't know if I have the pronunciation correct. It was Tractor Shelya Binks of the KHL. Apologies if I'm mispronouncing that, but he is going to the KHL. So the JF Berube PTO makes a lot of sense in that aspect. It's funny because Florida Panther fans, as far as this past season, have a really bad memory of JF Berube. If you go back all the way to February, we were talking about the high-scoring affair between the Florida Panthers and the Columbus Blue Jackets in their first two games, and was talking about how history repeating itself could possibly be in the favor of the Panthers. But it was quite the opposite, with JF Berube not giving up as much goals as the Florida Panthers did in their first two matchups, even though JF Berube was only the starter in that last one between the Panthers and the Blue Jackets. And that was also the game that Jonas Johansson made one of his two starts for the Cats. And that was also a weird stretch into the season where the Florida Panthers were lost to 3 straight home games against backup goaltenders in JF Berube, David Rittich, and Mikko Koskinen of the Edmonton Oilers. So that was weird stretches of the season. And listen, the Florida Panthers are going to have a weird stretch like that again this season. That might not make sense when you look at the season as a whole. We have 82 games of these to break down, to talk about, to overreact, underreact, you name it. But the Florida Panthers signed JF Berube to a PTO. Let's see if he makes a team or he gets a spot down in Charlotte. But there's a little bit of a logjam down in Charlotte, and even possibly Greenville. Excuse me, not Greenville. Estero for the Florida Everblades affiliate change. My apologies, Cats fans. But possibly an opportunity for one of those two things to happen. Don't know if the Florida Panthers carry 3 goaltenders like they did last year. That seems a little unlikely. Another signing that the Florida Panthers did make was Riley Nash, a 33-year-old winger, to a AHL deal with the Charlotte Checkers. A little bit of a familiar name for the Florida Panthers as far as the last few seasons. Spent with the Tampa Bay Lightning. Didn't really have much of a big role with them. Has mostly made his career in the AHL, a little bit with Syracuse, a little bit with the Charlotte Checkers the first time around when they were under the Carolina Hurricanes affiliation. So a little bit of a depth piece for the Checkers as well. And where the Florida Panthers are, we're going to be constantly trying to see the philosophy that the front office is trying to implement to this franchise. Of course, the cap situation is where it is, signing older players to one-year deals or PTOs and kind of helping them, helping the young guys help them get to the next level. And you need some of that veteran leadership on the NHL side and on the AHL side. So Riley Nash coming into the mix for the Florida Panthers could be good for the young guys down in Charlotte. It's an AHL deal only for now. We don't know what the future holds for Riley Nash in as far as coming up to the Panthers and signing him to an actual contract, but we'll see as the season goes on. But lots of depth pieces really this season. As far as them working, still up in the air because there's only so much that Bill Zito had at his disposal this offseason. I know in the beginning of the offseason, we were really hammering on trading Patrick Hornquist to try to get some cap relief for the Panthers, but that didn't happen. The Panthers look like they're sticking to what they got there with Hornquist as well. And it's going to, for as far as that, this is, I don't want to say the consequence of it, but this is just the result of not getting that off the books for the Panthers, that they have to go in different directions as far as these signings for not only the NHL roster, but down in Charlotte. So, great opportunity for the Panthers, great opportunity for these guys as well to get some playing time as well. So could be a good situation for everybody involved, but it's strange because it happens just a few days after TJ Shalot, the voice of the Charlotte Checkers, comes on the show, and then this happens. You're going to hear plenty of TJ Shalot on the call up down in Charlotte to discuss all the players who are there, who are on their way up, even the veterans who are going to be helping these guys. So make sure to follow TJ at TJ_Shalot. If you haven't listened to Thursday's episode yet of Locked On Panthers, make sure to listen to that on YouTube and on audio. So great conversation and great time and great timing as everything for the Florida Panthers rookie camp and prospect showcase, which I had a lot of fun watching. But once again, we'll get into segment number 3. But we need to cover something important that I cannot wait until Monday to discuss. Really, a comment that was made yesterday and me wanting to react to that. We're going to discuss that comment next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. But first, we're going to tell you all about BetOnline. And BetOnline is the number one source for all your pro and college betting needs and sports info this season. Find all the latest league developments, game matchups, news, and podcasts, including this year's opening week game. BetOnline is your continuous source for all your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, so there was a comment made yesterday where MacKenzie Weegar was interviewed by TSN ahead of the Calgary Flames season starting, and talking about his opportunity with Calgary, talking about the trade. And then he was asked whether the Calgary Flames are a much better team than what Florida has now. And MacKenzie Weegar said that the Calgary Flames do have a better squad and they're better positioned to be better than Florida. And, there was a lot of reactions online about it. And I put out a poll out for asking you guys, the fans, on whether this is something or nothing. And I'm going to go back to the poll real quick, but it was, last time I checked, it was over almost 75%, 3/4 that said nothing. 51 votes on this poll, and 76.5 of you said that it was nothing. There's two ways to look at this. Number one is that he's a guy who was the 6th to last pick of the draft, made his way all the way from the ECHL all the way to the NHL, got a big role with this team, being a number 1 pair defenseman opposite Aaron Ekblad, and then gets traded. And, you know, I don't know what the meaning behind, but not meaning, what the message is behind that, saying that they're better. But what do you expect him to say at the same time? I mean, of course you're supposed to be confident about your squad, of course. And Matthew Tkachuk was asked about it by Tom Gulitti, asking if he agrees with MacKenzie Weegar's statement on Calgary being better than Florida. And of course, Matthew Tkachuk is going to disagree with it. He says, no, I think we have a better squad. And, you know, it's just, I'm personally not going to have my feelings hurt about it. I know some out there were being really hurt about it, and I've seen a few things saying that people wanting them to fail. And honestly, for me, I don't want Jonathan Huberdeau nor MacKenzie Weegar to fail on an individual basis. You know, I'm cheering for those guys no matter what, even whether they're in Florida or whether they're in Calgary or anywhere else. But also, it was reported by Elliot Friedman of Sportsnet on the latest 32 Thoughts podcast about the type of extension that MacKenzie Weegar will likely receive from the Calgary Flames. And the AAV is looking around the ballpark of $6.5 million. Kind of like the Hampus Lindholm deal is what Elliot Friedman spoke about of the Boston Bruins when they traded Hampus Lindholm from the Anaheim Ducks to the Boston Bruins. And seeing where Huberdeau's cap hit is currently and what MacKenzie Weegar's cap hit could be, because this is just a report. There's no official confirmation until it's signed. But you could see it one of two ways as well. You could see it as A, the Florida Panthers dodged the bullet by signing those two and decreasing their window and having a real sense of urgency just these next 2 years, and then that's it. And then they could fall off a cliff. Possibly. And you could see it as well as this. Good teams, great teams, regardless of how great they are, you can't keep everybody. And it happens in almost in every sport that has a salary cap. I mean, like we see it in hockey with the Tampa Bay Lightning. They can't keep everybody. Andre Palat was someone that got that left for free agency. Ryan McDonough got traded. But I also think of like a football example, for example. In the NFL, the Baltimore Ravens are one team that is constantly in the playoffs. It's funny because the Dolphins play them this Sunday, but they are a team that's culturally always getting rid of a guy a year too early instead of a year too late. And the New England Patriots did that for many years with Belichick and Brady. But as far as the Panthers and Bill Zito's philosophy, that is nearly the same thing, is getting rid of guys a year too early before a year too late. And with the age factor in it, the cap as well, and how the tail end of the contracts are going to look, it's still the right decision to make the trade. And listen, there's still going to be some growing pains for the Panthers this year, but hey, we take this a few weeks at a time, a game at a time, a few months at a time as well. But I don't want to look too far as November and December. I just really want to focus on the first few weeks of the season, how the Panthers are going to look and how the Panthers are going to receive the message of head coach Paul Maurice as well, because there's so much turnover on a team that just won the President's Trophy. You would think that on paper, a team that won the President's Trophy would run it back because they believe in that talent. But then age is a factor. That we can't deny that age is a factor for players on the team. And average age, the Panthers got a lot younger and an opportunity to grow, and still a good portion of this team is back. And they have a taste of that winning. And that's the most important part. They have a taste of that. So that is really the biggest takeaway of winning a playoff round. Even if it didn't look the prettiest, it took a little bit of luck for the Panthers. Not saying that they didn't earn it. That's not what I'm saying. But of course, we saw what happened in Game 4 with a missed empty net goal by Washington. They pounced on it. The 3-goal comeback in Game 5, and everything after that, of course. But you still have a little bit of that taste and a possibility for the Panthers to come back hungry. And of course, Matthew Tkachuk, he's a second-round exit as well in the very same year. So he's going to come a little hungry as well come training camp. So once you put the skates on and once you get on the ice, then all this judging of what we've spoken about of the Panthers this offseason, is their defense core really going to take that step back? We think on paper it is, but hey, once you actually play the games, that narrative can very well change. That, and I hope that I'm proven wrong, saying that there will be growing pains and that the Panthers can just not necessarily cruise, but still find a way to find themselves in a position that they get off to a good start, that they're not playing catch up. Really, that's really the name of the game. We've experienced for so many years this team playing catch up. I mean, the Bob Bugner years are a perfect example of that. All these games in hand. I mean, but the schedule in October is very favorable for the Panthers, and we're going to go over that kind of next week on the show. Not now, but it's a good way for the Panthers to really get off to a good start and to really show the world that this President's Trophy winning team, though it's not the same, that they're not just going to be a team that's just a one-year wonder for across the NHL, and that it's going to continue to be a destination franchise. And that's what the Florida Panthers, Captain Alexander Barkov, Aaron Ekblad, Sergei Bobrovsky, and crew are trying to consistently prove to the rest of the NHL world. In segment number 3, we are going to talk about Game 1 of the Prospect Showcase up in North Carolina. It was an exciting time for myself, and I'm sure a lot of you who got to see hockey back on your televisions or computer screens or phones, wherever you may be watching. We're going to discuss that next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
Your Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Third and final segment here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast on this Friday, September 16th edition of the show. And we had some hockey, some Florida Panthers hockey, and it's that time of year. And with the prospect tournament going on, an opportunity for these players to really, if you've played any sports and you've been around a coach that probably you've never been around before, or an organization, especially since a lot of these guys are just recently drafted, you are doing your absolute best to just try to impress, to make sure you get noticed. And that's really what each and every one of these players are trying to do during this tournament. And of course, with being Aaron Ekblad even spoke about it even a few years ago, talking about how when you're in the middle of the season on the NHL level, that you can kind of go on autopilot sometimes throughout the season. This specific tournament and this specific time, rookie camp, prospect camp back in July, you cannot be on autopilot whatsoever. And any games that you watch, these next three, we just had one earlier this morning. You're going to see all effort throughout these guys, and it's going to be high energy. And that's really what myself that I could appreciate in the prospect tournament for the Florida Panthers and even the rest of the NHL, an opportunity for coaches to see who can I work with, who is a good listener, who listens, who processes the information, and then goes out and puts it out on the ice. And really, the Florida Panthers, it took a little bit for them. The first 10 minutes was really filled with a lot of rushes going the other way for them. Matt Goodsta, who's the starter for the Panthers, undrafted out of the OHL from the Barrie Colts, had faced a lot of chances and really kept this Florida Panthers team in the game. I mean, I know they gave up a goal on a rush chance going the other way, a delayed penalty by Justin Sordiff. But outside of that penalty, Justin Sordiff was very noticeable. Behind the net, a backhand opportunity in front of the net didn't go in, but you see Justin Sordiff, the stick skills and the fast skating, the change of direction that he has in him. You know, he was a star in the last prospect showcase last year, and earned it with getting an A on his sweater, along with Patrick Giles and Dennis Cesana, defenseman. So those are your three alternate captains for the Panthers. Matt Goodsta looked great, but really on 5-on-5, the Carolina Hurricanes had active sticks, a lot of deflections which led to the odd man rushes going the other way. But the Panthers, Jordy Kinnear and company, made adjustments along the way, and the Carolina Hurricanes caught out of position a lot too. Gave the Panthers a lot of power play opportunities. I believe there was 5. I mean, there's not really many stats on the prospect showcase. They don't even show shots on goal. But I was seeing a very dominant first period by the Carolina Hurricanes just by watching the game. But Matt Goodsta stood tall. The broadcast, which was a Carolina Hurricanes specific broadcast, was talking about Matt Goodsta's big frame, and he was my first star of the game for the Panthers, keeping them in it. But honestly, the Panthers were getting in front of the net later on. Even though they struggled on the power play at first, they were able to convert on the power play. The first power play goal was Xavier Cormier off a deflection of Santtu Kanunen. So the Panthers, they struggled early. But they found a way to break through later. I mean, also the Panthers, they outskated really the Carolina Hurricanes, especially in that third period. One player I also want to note is Josh Davies. Josh Davies caught the Carolina Hurricanes on a change when the Panthers were leading 2-1, and just took it right by himself, forehand, backhand to make it 3-1 as well. And even on a shorthanded opportunity, the Carolina Hurricanes were having a hard time handling the puck right on the blue line as they were on the power play, and then Josh Davies just takes it by himself, doesn't get a goal, but still creates another opportunity for the Panthers going the other way, shorthanded. Another star of this game, Sandisk Villmanas. He has a beautiful feed to Patrick Giles, and then who was skating right in from the left circle and accelerates right into the net. And also Sandisk Villmanas, he uses his speed for the 6th goal of the game to make it 6-1. And it was just a demolition for the Panthers in that third period. Started a little slow in the first, started to get it going, and just really was, as far as the skating and going back and forth, change of direction, the Florida Panthers prospects were really starting to to tire out the Carolina Hurricanes, really. And you got all types of goals. You got rebound goals by Liam Arnsby, a tip in by Cormier, backhand, right on the doorstep, a short side goal. And you had all types of different ways that the Panthers scored. You saw them really aggressive in their board battles. Neutral zone was a little troublesome at first, but the Panthers they were passing right into the sticks of the Carolina Hurricanes, but they were finding a way to be more patient when entering the zone and finding the open man as they were cutting into the slot. So great first impression for Jordy Kinnear's squad up in North Carolina. And the Florida Panthers, they will have a practice day on Saturday right before they will take on the prospects of the Tampa Bay Lightning Sunday at 1 p.m. For those of you who are also football fans, you could also, why not watch both games at the same time for both the Florida Panthers and the Miami Dolphins. I know they play at the same time, but an opportunity to see the young guys out there and getting more playing time. And once again, another player that I want to highlight here is Marek Alsher. Was a guy who got on the rush for the Panthers and for the fifth goal of the game. That's another player that I want to highlight for the Panthers. But 3 stars of the game for the Panthers. Third star of the game, Josh Davies. Like I said, scored in the game, and also a shootout goal. Remember that these prospect tournaments, they have shootouts after. Second star of the game, Sandisk Villmanas, who had an assist and a goal in this one. And then number 1 star of the game for the Florida Panthers is Mac Goodsta. Mac Goodsta, an opportunity for him to be the backup to Alex Lyon down in Charlotte, but a possibility for him to also play a little bit in Estero for the Florida Everblades this season, but has really made a good case for him to possibly play in Charlotte. If you're looking at him getting more starts, I would love to, as far as getting the reps in, maybe it's best if he starts in Estero for at least his first season under the Florida Panthers organization, just to because even TJ Shalot spoke about it on the recent episode of Locked On Panthers, is that goalies, the best thing that they could get is reps, and that's how they get better, getting some reps. And chances are Alex Lyon is probably going to be the number 1 guy in Charlotte. So don't be surprised if we see Matt Goodsta, even if he plays well the rest of this tournament. Don't know if he starts game 2 of the prospect tournament, but if he starts either the third period as well, or even the last game against Nashville, which will be on Monday, we could very well see Matt Goodsta start in Estero and get the reps there to eventually, hopefully, move him up to Charlotte, and then who knows where the Florida Panthers go from there. Because goalies, it's like, yeah, you get more sure things when you draft in the first round, but really for goalies, you can get any of them, not any of them, but you could develop any goalie really from any round, and they could become Vezina Trophy winners. I mean, Sergei Bobrovsky, somebody who was undrafted, a 2-time Vezina Trophy winner, and you never know where they could come from. So a very encouraging day and for Matt Goodsta, and a very encouraging day for the Florida Panthers prospects as well. So wanted to get this pot out after the first game of the prospect tournaments, and of course it really fit in with the schedule that I had the last few days, and really the fact that it started at 10 is okay, watch this game and talk about it because it's still in the Friday window. So thank you guys for listening to this episode of Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. We're going to have more of recaps of the prospect tournament against the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Nashville Predators. We're also going to have another division preseason crossover edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. We have 3 more teams to cover. We have the Boston Bruins, we have the Buffalo Sabres, and we have the Toronto Maple Leafs. I'm going to leave that as a surprise as which of the teams we are going to have a crossover show with. So make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Make sure to subscribe to the audio version of the show. We're almost at 200 subscribers on the YouTube channel. So make sure to smash that subscribe button and the like button as well on every video that you see here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. So, and of course you get to see the background here on the video version. You get to see this office that I do the show from. So make sure to subscribe to the show on all different types of platforms. So thank you guys for listening, and I will see you guys on Monday.